Hello everyone. Today I'm gonna talk about Yeats' two rest of poems, The Second Coming and Leda and the Swan, and I will wrap up Yeats, his four poems in the total. So for The Second Coming, okay, I'm gonna read aloud the first part and then I will move on to the second part. Turning and turning, you may not see the stanza here, but you can use your text while I am reading this passage, while I am reading this stanza. Okay, turning and turning in the widening gyre. So, did you look at the bottom explanatory notes for the definition of the term gyre? If you look at the number 1 in the explanatory notes, you see the definition of Yeats' term gyre. It's this way, it's a spiral motion. You see here, this black one and red one. And the gyre, okay, spiraling motion starts over there and the black one starts from here. And as it goes to the center, the spiraling motion gets stronger, and the lead colored gyre as well. As it goes into the center, the power of the gyre becomes stronger. So that way, at the center, these two forces of the spiraling motion are clashing each other, and that way, there's a chaos. It comes arising at the center. That's why Yeats, from the beginning in the poem, depicts that this gyre turning and widening. As you see here, this spiraling motion, as it goes into the center, it's getting stronger and it becomes widening. Then why does Yeats draw upon this term gyre, and what does he want to depict? So, turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. So, chaos comes arising at the center. So, at the center, the center cannot hold at this center of gyre. So that way, things fall apart. What Yeats draws out of this chaos at the center, in which things fall apart, he draws out anarchy. Its fourth line, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Through the anarchy, Yeats goes further by depicting that the blood-dimmed tide is loosed and everywhere. The ceremony of innocence is drowned, and the best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. So what does he say here? What does Yeats say in this first part of the poem? So if you look at the number 2 in the explanatory notes, you will see the background of this poem. This poem, The Second Coming, was written in January 1919 in the aftermath of World War I and Russian Revolution, the second one, and on the eve of the Anglo-Irish War. So all of these, in a sense, chaotic clashes were undergoing during Yeats' period. So as you see images here, this is the images of Nazism, which caused the World War I. And this is this image. People were preoccupied. They were madly preoccupied with Nazism. That's why Yeats may put here, the worst are full of passionate intensity. So their passion, the people's passion on the Nazism became more madly. That's why Yeats puts here intensity. And this another image is the Russian Revolution. from 1917 to 1923. And the last one is the image of the Anglo-Irish War. So the war between Britain and Ireland. Do you remember the historical background of the poem Easter 1916? That poem was based upon the historical event of Easter Rising, occurred in 1916. And that was the rebellion, occurred in Dublin. And that rebellion became 3 years later, that rebellion, Easter Rising, became the war, this one, Anglo-Irish War. So this way, all of these major chaotic events and the people during those periods had to undergo this chaos. That's why Yeats here may put anarchy. And that's why he finds this type of gradually increasing force of the sparring motion at the center, which brings about the chaos. The world is full of chaos for Yeats' perspective. Then let's move on to the second part from 9th line. It's on your book. It's page on 2037. It's 9th line. But in the midst of anarchy, Yeats finds surely some revelation is at hand. So even though the world is full of anarchy, Yeats finds out certain revelation. Surely the second coming is at hand. And in his revelation, the change that's upcoming to Yeats, he called it as the second coming. But if you see over there, the title, the second coming is actually the term used in Christianity. It refers to Jesus' returning to the world to save the people and to save the world. So that way, the second coming is Jesus' returning to the world in Christianity. But here, Yeats twists that term. He does not literally accept the meaning of Christian meaning of the second coming, but he has invented another meaning of the second coming here. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming, hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. So if we think that the second coming in Christian way, in Christian perspective, maybe the picture would be like this. The Jesus would be coming from the heaven to save the people and to save the world. So with the light, the very symbolic light for saving people. But if you look at the specific shape of the second coming in Yeats' poem here, a shape with the second coming is a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it weird shadows of the indignant desert birds. What this mean? What this all mean? So in this poem, Yeats creates or he reshapes the second coming in the form of lion body and the head of the man, but the gaze is blank and the gaze is also pitiless. But if you imagine the Jesus Christ, then the eyes of the Jesus Christ would be full of pity because he wants to save the people. But unlike Jesus Christ, this lion-bodied and one-headed something strange figure, his gaze is blank and his gaze is pitiless. This is another comparison with the Jesus Christ. And that is moving its slow thighs. While all about it, weird shadows of the indignant desert birds. And the darkness drops again. So with this second coming, not the light, but with this second coming, the darkness drops again. But now I know that 20 centuries of the stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. So this is more symbolic and more complicated that we need to unpack more in a more detailed way. That here the 20 centuries of the stony sleep that symbolizes the Christianity. Yeats thinks that Christianity has 2,000 years of history, and that history of Christianity has maintained the order of the world. But that 2,000 years history of Christianity would be falling into the nightmare. By what? By rocking cradle that is about to burst forth. So this means that the 2,000 years of Christianity, representatively England or other Western culture, other major Western culture, that long time history would be replaced by another new birth, which cannot be identified yet. And what rough beast? It's our come round at last. And this rough beast slouches toward Bethlehem to be born. So we don't know what type of rough beast would be coming in the upcoming future. We cannot identify it. But here, Yeats is not interested in identifying this rough beast. Rather, his emphasis on concern the experience of the upcoming change in the new force of history, as he says here, as he puts here, the history of the long time history of Christianity would be replaced by another, the rocking cradle, which we cannot identify yet. But Yeats does not attempt to identify that the new historical force, but his concern is the experience itself to engage with the new upcoming force of history. Okay, that's why Yeats here depicts beast in mysterious way, and he does not attempt to specify it. He depicts in mysterious way, and that way. And this is the way of how Yeats finds terrible beauty in history. His concern is to draw out our experience in history itself. Sometimes for a certain historical force we cannot expect, especially this pandemic caused by the COVID-19. Is there anyone who expects this unexpected future? So we don't know the future. We don't know the upcoming future. The only thing that we can do is to engage with the historical force that's upcoming in the future. I guess that's what Yeats tries to emphasize here. And that way, Yeats' passion on history can be also grasped in his another poem, Leda and the Swan. The poem is not long, it's actually quite short, but it's still not easy to understand what he's talking about in this poem. Okay. The first and second stanza are based upon the Greek mythology. As you see over there, the first and second stanza is based upon the Greek mythology in which the god Zeus, in the form of a swan, rapes Leda. The Greek god Zeus has changed this form of a swan, and in this form of a swan, Zeus rapes Leda. So there are, I guess, more than 2 pictures of this Leda and Swan, but I think that this drawing has done by Michelangelo, but I guess in another angle, this second picture would be also effective to convey the violence of the swan, the Zeus rape. So if I read aloud the first and second stanza, A sudden blow, rape, Jews rape, and the great wings beating still. You know, the Jews has changed to the swan, which has the great wings. And above the staggering girl, her thighs here, cursed. By the dark web, her nape caught in his bill, he holds her helpless breast upon breast. How can those terrified vague fingers push the feathered glory from her loosening thighs? Terrified vague fingers of Leda. She cannot push Swan, Jews rape. She cannot avoid it. She cannot escape it. Then how she can? And how can body laid in that white rush, another symbolic metaphor of the rape, and feel the strange heart beating where it lies? So as you see here, and as you see this picture, the first and second stanza are depicting the rape scene. Jews rape of Leda. If the first and second stanza are obviously about on the Greek mythology, Jews rape of the Leda, third stanza seems and sounds a little more different the first and second stanza. Then how? A shudder in the loins engenders there the broken wall, the burning roof and tower, the Agamemnon dead. Again, a shudder in the loins. This is very sexually symbolic present a metaphor of the rape. So if shudder in the loins symbolically are symbolic metaphor of rape, then in what ways does this rape engender the broken wall and the burning roof and tower and Agamemnon dead? This is actually another story. So the rape is the first, and if we think that the Jews rape of the Leda as the present tense event, the event in the present, if we imagine that way, Leda, after the rape, bears Helen. Leda was the queen of the Sparta, ancient Sparta, and that way, Helen is the daughter of Leda and Zeus. If you remind yourself of, this is the Greek mythology, and that's how Helen is born. Then Helen grows terribly beautiful, and her terrible beauty becomes well known to neighboring states. And one day, Helen was captivated by a man, and that captivation ignited this Trojan War. So the line, 10th and 11th line are reference to the Trojan War. So this means that if the rape is the present event, Helen's birth is the future event, and this Trojan War is more distant event. What in the overall, in terms of the third stanza, what third stanza symbolically presents is that all of these two future events, Helen's birth and then her ignited the war, are condensed into this third stanza. These future events are condensed into this present event of the rape. Why? That's because Helen's birth and Trojan War are the consequences of the rape. So that way, the 9th line, a shatter in the loins, the rape engenders. So in this rape scene, a shatter in the loins, these two future events are already, in a sense, embedded in that present event of rape. Again, why? That's because these two, Helen's birth and Trojan War, are the consequences of the rape. Then Yeats raises a question. Being so caught up, this is again return to rape. Being so caught up, so mastered by the brute blood of the air, did she put on his knowledge with his power before the indifferent beak could let her drop? So this means that when Leda was caught up by Swan, just when she is raped, Yeats questions, does she know that all of these future events that would be happening in the future? Does she know that? Or is there any that she knows that? Yeats again, as he does not give the answer to the several questions in Easter 1916, Yeats gives the several questions, but he does not give the answer to those questions. Here again, Yeats gives the question, did she put on his knowledge with his power before the indifferent beak could let her drop? Is there any way for Leda to know these future events when she was being raped by Zeus? Yeats again does not give the answer. Why? That's because Yeats is not interested on giving the answer. Yeats' only concern again is the history itself, or the experience of the history, our experience of the history. So we can raise this type of question. Is there any way for us to know, to predict the future? We may not be able to predict the future. The only thing that we can have is to engage with the present. Engage with the present and engage with the history. It's a force. Sometimes we are blown by the historical force, something that we cannot expect, like this pandemic. But is there any way for us to predict it? We may not have. So the only thing that remains for us, like Yeats himself, the only thing that we can do is to engage with this historical force. It's, in a sense, our fundamental submission to the history itself. So this is the last part of the Yeats' poem. So if you compare his earlier phase of the poem, Lake Innisfree, and the middle period of Easter 19, and little further, the Leda and the Swan and Second Coming, you may grasp a noticeable change. How Yeats has been changed stylistically from the precise imagery of the beautiful nature to this political event in which he does not politicize the event, rather he aestheticizes that historical event to draw out a moving energy from the historical force. And going further in Leda and the Swan and Second Coming, Yeats goes on to showing stronger passion on history. Okay, so I will stop here for next class. So we don't have the class on next Tuesday, that's University Foundation Day. And then I haven't yet decided the reading. That's because originally we were supposed to read a whole book, the novel, but we cannot cover that for the remaining weeks, so I have to change it. And then I will decide the text, and then my decision of the text will be uploaded during the weekend by this Sunday. And once it's uploaded, I will let you know by 3 ways: email, message, and SMS. Thank you for today's class. Have a good rest of the week.